gentle clatter of the horseshoe still fits into the pattern of the countryside, and where more fitting than Cockington, famous for its ancient blacksmith's forge. For nestling quietly between Torquay and Paignton on the English Riviera, it's earned its title, the prettiest village in England. Dating back to the 11th century, the village has changed little, and the sheer loveliness of the natural surroundings may well have inspired the career of Robert Sweet, most famous of English horticulturalists, who was born at the Rose Cottage 115 years ago. Appropriate, too, is an old village industry, the distilling of perfume, which began in this fragrant setting. It's easy to believe a local claim that the waters of this ancient wishing well have health-giving qualities. How else could the countryside have retained this serene beauty?
It's the sight of palm trees and the dazzle of Riviera villas that stir your memory. The opulence and luxury are what you'd expect to find somewhere along the Mediterranean. This is where international entertainers like Max Bygraves choose to stay, away from the clamour of the public. A summer playground where the car ferry's arrival may spell out some clue to the identity of the place. So step ashore at, where? France? The tricolour is French, but the cry is Vive les Anglais. Look again, and you'll recognize Torquay as the town which has adopted a French atmosphere. The illusion lives on when the waiters serve up the fun on Torquay Hotel's Day. It isn't the first man to finish who wins the annual race through the town. In true French style, it's the one who doesn't spill a drop that takes the top prize. Even the English sense of fair play is out of the running. In a one-lap race, there's still a chance for someone to lick the rest of the field. Torbay is the Riviera of England, a 3-in-1 resort that stretches for 20 miles along the South Devon coast. Brixham and Paignton have joined Torquay to bring a continental taste to the southwest. Add a dash of French flavouring to this holiday cocktail, and the result is what you see on Paignton Green, a concours d'élégance. The gleaming veterans can ignore the challenge of speed. It's appearances which catch the judge's eye. This lineup reflects the devotion of the enthusiasts who clock up countless hours restoring their charges to polished perfection. Yet even if motoring today is a matter-of-fact convenience, speed still has no place in the narrow, twisting lanes around Brixham. The replica of the Golden Hind keeps Brixham firmly anchored to the seafaring traditions of the Elizabethan age. The trawler fleet, smaller these days, still provides the town with its most important industry. Now it's the tourists who cast their nets to snap up legend and history. Like the statue of William III, who as Prince of Orange landed at this spot in 1688. The seagulls argue over what's left behind while the guests go a la carte to choose seafood freshly caught from the waters around Torbay. crab and lobster earn a daily place on the menu. It's a poolside dining table that adds the touch of Mediterranean luxury and encourages people like composer Lionel Bart to go continental here in Torbay. Those who soak up the sun give the beaches an international appeal. On the sandy playground of Torquay, Brixham and here at Paynton, the bikini sets now look just as much at home as the bucket and spade enthusiasts. You can build up a whole host of memories on the wide beaches and secluded coves of this 20-mile stretch of coastline. It's the contrasts that catch the eye. Thatched country cottages edging alongside seaside hustle and bustle. The scaled-down fascination of the model village at Babbacombe. Cockington Village, exact in every tiny detail, is in fact a life-size attraction for those who discover this rural setting only minutes from the busy heart of Torquay. Here, the cottagers have survived the pace of progress and settled for a gentle jog trot, which is more in keeping with its character. There's no rush or urgency about Cockington, no bouncy exuberance like you'll find at the hotel's day fete. It's a fun and laughter occasion in the best of garden party traditions, with a very English version of French roulette. A face in the crowd, the very familiar face of an entertainer who's in Torquay for the summer season. Val Dunican is a personality who draws the crowds. It's carnival time, the big band and candy floss occasion that brings out the crowds. A cavalcade with star quality. The climax to a day when the Hotels Association take over the town.
Oxford, a city set in the very heart of England, with a history going back over 1,000 years. A city of dreaming spires that has seen so much English history made. The famous university was founded in the 12th century, and ever since scholars and travellers have thronged to Oxford. Visitors are charmed by its beautiful and splendid architecture. In the High Street, one of the loveliest streets in Europe, they may stay perhaps in the Mitre Hotel, whose doors have been open to travellers for 600 years. But the colleges, like Magdalen, founded in 1458, are Oxford's glory. Many think Magdalen the loveliest of all, though it's hard to make a decision among so many beautiful buildings. And Oxford is an ideal starting point for the journey through some of the loveliest country in the whole of England, a journey to bring the picture postcard to life. Within easy reach is Shakespeare's country, and that means so much more than simply a visit to Stratford-upon-Avon. But Stratford-upon-Avon is the heart of Shakespeare's country. And here, in the fine modern Memorial Theatre on the banks of the River Avon, Shakespeare's plays are presented for 8 months of every year. Close by his theatre, so different from the old Globe where he saw his plays performed, sits the immortal bard. In a magnificent setting stands Stratford's Holy Trinity Church, where William Shakespeare was christened and buried. The country round Stratford-upon-Avon is glorious. In the High Street are some of the finest half-timbered houses in England, which harmonise so perfectly with the surrounding Warwickshire landscapes. Typical of them is the house in Henley Street where Shakespeare was born, which dates back to the early 16th century. Still furnished in the original style, it is now a museum open for you to see. So much of Stratford looks as it did in the poet's day. Even the old shops recall the past. And the hotels of Stratford were once old coaching inns. The Falcon dates back to the 16th century. And so does another of Stratford's many hotels, the White Swan. Stratford also has an interesting link with the United States in Harvard House, built in 1596 by Alderman Thomas Rogers. His daughter married Robert Harvard, and their son John founded the famous American university. The house was bought and presented to Harvard University in 1909. Mary Arden's house, where Shakespeare's mother lived. And a pleasant way of sightseeing is to hire a punt and gently pole your way along the Avon. Barely a mile from Stratford is the village of Shottery. And along this very footpath, which you can still follow through the meadows, Shakespeare walked to pay court to Anne Hathaway, who became his wife. She lived in this picturesque thatched farmhouse that is known to the world now as Anne Hathaway's cottage. It looks today very much as it did over 300 years ago. Descendants of the Hathaway family owned it until as recently as the end of the last century. And inside, there is still much of the original Hathaway furniture. There's a peaceful charm about the little towns and villages, and a friendliness among the people, too. What could be pleasanter than a fishing holiday, staying at an old inn like this? Or you can visit the delightful riverside village of Welford, with its picturesque houses, where the days pass at a gentle tempo and the people busy themselves in their gardens. And these are indeed the typical gardens of England. What glorious country you can drive through when you start to explore further afield in Shakespeare's country. To the southwest, in the Cotswolds, lies the charming Georgian town of Cheltenham, with its broad streets lined with fully grown chestnut and lime trees, and its beautifully laid out gardens. In Cheltenham is one of England's great public schools, Cheltenham College, founded over a century ago. Eastwards now, through the lovely Cotswold country. Halfway between Cheltenham and Oxford is Burford, whose dignified high street shows that this delightful old town was once an important centre of commerce. These Cotswold towns and villages almost seem to melt into the country around them, their houses built with the mellow, honey-coloured local stone in the finest tradition of English craftsmanship. Here in Burford, life is a gracious, pleasant affair. And what more welcome contrast could a busy town dweller find than a stroll down one of Burford's lanes with, instead of the din of traffic, the gentle hum of bees over garden borders. Burford was once a great centre of the wool trade in the days when the spinning and weaving of wool was England's greatest industry. Those days have long passed, and Burford's fame is a great commercial centre with them. But fine woolen cloth is still woven in Burford, and lovely materials are made on hand looms like these. Burford was once an important communications centre too, and in the days of the stagecoaches, it boasted many fine coaching inns like this one. There are so many contrasts in Shakespeare's country. Leamington Spa seems almost modern compared with the mellow Cotswold towns. It dates from Regency times when the fine people from London came to Leamington to stroll in the gardens and take the waters in these royal baths. In the first year of Queen Victoria's reign, the town was called Royal Leamington Spa by royal licence. It seems hard to believe that less than 30 years before this, Leamington had been an unimportant village of 500 inhabitants. Today you can follow the example of those Regency visitors and, like them, go to Leamington Spa to take the waters and to walk in the beautiful riverside gardens. This ancient windmill is a landmark on the road from Leamington to Warwick. Plants grow on its crumbling walls, but its sails will still obey the wind. On to Warwick, a town steeped in English history whose origins go back to Roman Britain. Dominating the town is magnificent Warwick Castle, standing in a commanding position above the River Avon. Nearby are the ruins of Kenilworth Castle, where once the Earl of Leicester entertained Queen Elizabeth I with rare shows and sports. But Warwick Castle is still the home of the Earl of Warwick, while Kenilworth's glory has departed and only a splendid ruin remains. How charming the old thatched houses are as the road leads back into the Cotswolds. In Chipping Camden, a lovely name for a lovely town with its high street sweeping in a graceful curve to the old wool market hall. Seldom used as a market now, it's a favourite stopping place for visitors, who are likely to stop too at one of Chipping Camden's picturesque inns. Stow-on-the-Wold is set in a country of rolling hills and meadows. At one end of its open marketplace stand the old stocks, originally prescribed as a punishment for unruly artisans. Petty offenders sat with their legs imprisoned for a stretch of several hours. Another beautiful Cotswold town is Moreton-in-the-Marsh, and the same is true of Bourton-on-the-Water, where graceful bridges span the sparkling stream that wanders through the village. Here in this tranquil English village, there's no bustle, no hurry. You can spend your time agreeably, idly watching a trout rise, or the villagers going about their daily tasks. A great attraction of Bourton-on-the-Water is its model village, which is a delight for both young and old. Exquisitely built to scale, it's a perfect replica in miniature of an English village. And what fun for children to roam through these enchanting streets, stopping to peer into a church, playing the part of little Gullivers in a tiny Lilliput as they tower above the houses and bend down to look into shop windows. From a model village to a real one of the most famed in England, Broadway, with its spacious, sweeping high street. At one end is the Lincoln Arms Hotel, an unforgettable English hostelry. Unforgettable is the whole atmosphere of old English charm of Broadway. Yes, these picture postcards were all brought to life. The travellers are back where they started, at Oxford. A record of their journey goes home to their relatives and friends. For them, they're a collection of enticing postcards. For the travellers, a memory never to be forgotten of their journey through Shakespeare's country.
To a place always pretty, Castle Combe in Wiltshire, that has never known the hurry of modern life. And here is the prettiest village in England. Who says so? Why, the British Travel Association, who decided on Castle Combe after examining all claimants to the title. It was surely the nicest beauty parade of all. The village antique shop must hold a wealth of interest, for Castle Combe has quite a history. It was sitting here before the Romans came, and its name is a record of the many battles that came after. But today, the village is at peace. The well here is dressed in its own beauty. Its water runs the way those people are walking. Follow them, or follow them. They're going the same picturesque way.
As we've just discovered, appearances can be deceptive. So reserving your judgment this time, before your eyes deceive you again, see if you can guess the whereabouts of this tropical island paradise. The clue is in the word island. Well, strange as it seems, this isn't the South Seas. It's in a rather bleak part of the northern hemisphere. Well, if you haven't already guessed, it's the Isle of Man. But then strange is an apt word for this delightful island. After a stay here, nothing will surprise you. No, you haven't got double vision. They really have got 4 horns. Mind you, that's only 2 more than usual, which is nothing out of the ordinary in these parts. Everything has some strange significance. This, for example, is one of the bridges presided over by the fairies. Talking about fairies, the island abounds in folklore and legends of the little folk. And needless to say, the inhabitants of Man are highly superstitious. It's not unusual, for example, to see food and drink left outside a house for the little people. Even more common, though, is the tradition of leaving old cottages and homes for the little folk to make use of. Things are left just as they were. In places, disused cottages, relatively undamaged, can be bought for a song and renovated quite cheaply. But no one would ever think of depriving the little folk. Of course, no one in his right senses believes in fairies. The Manx cat is, of course, well known, although its origin is somewhat obscure. Veterinary experts denying the legend that they're the offshoots of cats crossed with hares, hence the short forelegs and long hind legs. Just as surprising is the Laxey wheel, built over 100 years ago for pumping water out of the lead mines, and run today by a local man purely as a hobby to entertain the tourists. If you want proof that fairies exist, you can go to the Fairy Bridge at Bellona, where, while they may not always come out in the open, they certainly make their presence felt. Local people crossing the bridge always greet the fairies with a wave of the hand. Coach drivers, for example, reflect that this is the place they get their punctures should they happen to forget to salute. And this is the only spot on the island where we, through disrespect, had camera trouble. As we weren't able to produce any fairies, we found a self-professed witch instead, Dr. G.B. Gardner. Sweeping the crossroads near his home in Castledown, placing the dust in a shoe in which it's taken indoors, is done to simulate sweeping away continuous bad luck. These superstitions are typical. Many fishermen will still cancel a fishing trip if they see a red-haired woman or a cross-eyed man. In a tiny island 30 miles by 10 miles, there's a whole world of beauty, interest, and enchantment.
And now thither to the Ouse Valley and a lovely bit of English history in stone. the ancient walled city of York, with parts of the original walls still standing, including the famous Maltangular Tower. The remains of a fortress built by William the Conqueror, and a section of the bullet-marked walls that tell their own grim tale. Micklegate, with its heraldic shields, loopholes and embattled corner turrets, surmounted by quaint protective figures, is perhaps the best preserved reminder of the city's early Norman occupation. Furnished with a barbican or outwork is Walmgate, and abutting on the minster is Bootham Bar, near the entrance used by the white monks 700 years ago. The ancient Cathedral of St. Peter, York Minster, was begun in the 13th century, and nothing could surpass the grandeur of the twin towers that house Great Peter, the Big Bell. The narrow streets of the old Roman fortress of Eboracum, with their gabled houses, have lost little of their antiquity, though York itself has taken on a more commercial atmosphere. But most of the timber dwellings have escaped the hand of the renovator, and the mellowness of their history remains undisturbed. A typical alley and a typical boy. In the grounds of the Yorkshire Philosophical Society's museum are the remains of the Benedictine Abbey of St. Mary, founded in 1078. The noble ruins of the chapter house remind us again that York has figured in recorded history for nearly 1900 years. And
let's break away from the hubbub of town and visit the Cotswolds, that glorious stretch of hill-girt country that is England at her best. The name of the village of Lower Slaughter may not sound so musical as some of the others in the neighbourhood, like Burton on the Water or Stow on the Wold, but that doesn't affect its quiet beauty. With its twin village of Upper Slaughter, the lower is in the secluded valley of the River Windrush, a swift, meandering stream spanned by many little bridges of stone and wood. The stream actually runs through the middle of the village. The road here is part of the ancient Fosse Way, and the ancients prefer to keep it that way. In the garden of the manor house there's a dovecote as big as a barn. Life is a very placid thing in this typical Cotswold village, and there's plenty of time for everything, especially a gossip on the river bank.
Wales, just west of the Marches and not far from the Shakespeare country. Wales, one of the smallest nations in the world, so small in numbers that it treasures the tale of its past like the story of a family. So great in spirit that from these valley cottages, from these hillside farms, its sons and daughters have made their mark on history and yet remain loyally, even obstinately Welsh. In this little land, they still speak the tongue their Celtic ancestors brought to Britain 4 centuries before Julius Caesar. From this land, Welshmen have ridden forth to become leaders of nations, to shape the future of lands bigger than their own, like Henry Tudor, who became a king of England, or David Lloyd George, who led Britain through the First World War. But today we are not going so far, just to the Eisteddfod. Almost every village in Wales has its Eisteddfod, and the Royal National Eisteddfod, held in North and South Wales in alternate years, is the focal point of the nation's culture and a unique attraction for visitors. Here the bards gather in their traditional robes of white, green and blue to select and crown the prize-winning poets of the year. For above all, Wales is a land of poetry and song. Prowess in either of these is universally honoured, and a Welshman who cannot sing is a contradiction in terms. If you ask a Welsh farmer, for example, how many men work for him, don't be surprised if he answers 2, a baritone and a tenor. Hen Wlad Vinadau, Land of My Fathers, is not merely a national anthem, but also the epitome of what Welshmen feel about this land of hills and mountains which have profoundly affected its history. For they have always provided Wales with a natural defence against attack from outside. The isolation of rugged heights and narrow valleys has kept the Welsh people, the Welsh culture and the Welsh language alive since the dawn of British history, through turbulent centuries when might was right. But though every square mile of Wales is soaked in history, to the pride of its countrymen and the delight of its visitors, Wales does not live by memories alone. Hence the magnificent civic centre in the heart of Cardiff, the capital of Wales. Though it was founded in Roman times, a century and a half ago, it was still only a small country town of 1,800 souls. Today, with its beautifully planned parks and open spaces, it is a city of 250,000 people, a city which has preserved much gracefulness of living. Cardiff's cathedral is one of the tallest of the many fine buildings in the civic centre in Cathay's Park. At the other end of the historical scale is the massive structure of Cardiff Castle, on a site which has been in almost continuous occupation since the Romans built a fort here in the 1st century AD. When the Normans began to build their keep, they made use of the Roman outer walls, and much of the original Roman fabric can still be seen cheek by jowl with the work of Norman and medieval masons. Few buildings in the world can show to the visitor such a rich harvest from 2,000 years of human activity. But Cardiff is only one of the 200-odd castles in Wales, most of which are open to visitors. Conway Castle, for example, is considered the finest work of medieval fortification in the British Isles. Half a dozen miles from Conway, across the river, lies Llandudno, one of the best-loved holiday resorts on Wales's 500 miles of coastline. Llandudno surrounds a perfect bay sweeping between two headlands, the Little Orme and the Great Orme. A real family resort this, with glorious beaches for the children. Two beaches, in fact, one each side of the Great Orme Peninsula, which is less than a mile wide. Here you can have the best of the sun either end of the day. A modern resort, but rich in legend and history. It was here, strolling along the foreshore, that Lewis Carroll first told the story of Alice in Wonderland to young Alice Liddell. It is hardly surprising that the atmosphere which helped to inspire that immortal tale can still cast a spell on holidaymakers generations later. To Llandudno Pier come comfortable passenger steamers from Liverpool, Anglesey and the Isle of Man. For Llandudno is a deep-water port, handling scheduled steamer services round the year. Another Llandudno attraction is the links of the North Wales Golf Club, fronting the estuary of the River Conway, a course of great variety open to tourists, where ideal holiday golf can be enjoyed. Long, scientific holes to landward contrast with adventurous holes among the estuary sand dunes. Happy Valley on the slopes of the Great Orme is famous for its rock gardens and Halfrey gardens. On the Great Orme can be found traces of Druid ceremonies and of Roman copper mines. Here too is the 12th century church of St. Tydno, who gave the town its name, Llandudno, the place of Tydno. It's a stiff, though pleasant climb to the crest of the promontory, and if you prefer to take it the easy way, there's always the importantly named Great Orme Railway, which runs from the seafront all the way to the 700-foot summit. Wales seems to have a weakness for odd railways. One of the most famous of all is the Tylwyth Railway, which starts at Tywyn on the west coast near Aberdyfi and runs inland for 6 3/4 miles to Abergynolwyn. A classic survival of the narrow gauge era, It was originally built to bring slate from Bryn Eglwys quarries to the main line, carrying passengers almost as an afterthought. When the quarries closed in 1946, it looked like the end of the Talyllyn Railway as well. But thanks to the efforts of a body of enthusiastic amateurs, it survived and is now run as a non-profit-making concern available to the public by the Talyllyn Railway Preservation Society. The Society's members give their free time to help run and maintain it. One of its locomotives has been in continuous operation since the line was opened in 1886. Nowadays, of course, the railway is purely a passenger line, and well worth a visit. For not only does the Talyllyn Railway run through some of the loveliest Welsh scenery, it's also a museum piece in complete contrast to the normal, up-to-date railways in Wales. Here is perfect country for hiking, for you cannot walk a few miles without a change of scene. Close woodland gives way to bare mountain to hill pasture to river valley, all in the space of a day's tramping. Agriculture is still the basic industry of the greater part of Wales. The typical Welsh farm is small and worked by the farmer and his family, sometimes with one paid worker, rarely with more. This too springs from the nature of the land. There are few broad plains for large-scale mechanized farming, and over a quarter of the country's farmlands are 1,000 feet or more above sea level, even though the sea is nowhere more than 50 miles away. Led by the world-famous Sir John Hunt, chief of the expedition which conquered Everest, a party of climbers starts up a mountainside in Snowdonia. Sir John's home is in Wales, and it was here that he and many of his Everest party put in their training, for Wales offers some of the best climbing in Great Britain. Sir John Hunt's pupils on this occasion are youngsters from the Outward Bound Sea School at Aberdyfi, a venture which has attracted the interest of many public figures. In addition to the normal school curriculum, it emphasizes character building and the development of young people's powers of initiative and leadership. The boys take a month's course, which includes both seamanship and rock climbing. They learn as well to travel across mountainous country by map and compass and to fend for themselves in all weathers. There have been great Welsh mountaineers, for example Dr. Charles Evans, a native of Corwin, who was deputy to Sir John Hunt on the Everest expedition. But in general, the people of this land of mountains regard their peaks as part of a loved landscape. People come to Wales from many lands and, once having been, are sometimes haunted by it so that they return again and again. Perhaps because of the beautiful countryside, the charming villages, the friendly people. In all these things, Wales is outstanding. But perhaps it is that Wales has a living and compelling personality, an appeal the visitor never quite forgets. In this old green land, fact and fable are woven together to make the tapestry of living. Past, present and future, all are one, and all are alive.
Watch out, oh the neighbours cry, who you gonna meet till after
This is London. Napoleon said that Britain was a nation of shopkeepers, and right or wrong, London is a market.
Painted the roses. Roses, smell them. Look, every piece guaranteed. Half a dozen. And to add, there's the cups. A lip-shaped cup. When you drink your tea, your lip fits the cup. Your nose doesn't go in it. It's burnished gold, burnished handle, hand-painted, and every piece guaranteed. The half a dozen. You can do as you like with those. You can throw those at the old man, and they'll bounce back to the dresser.
London is a market, and here in Trafalgar Square, London is selling history. But London can sell you peaceful surprises. London can sell you a country ride on horseback, inches away from its bustle. London can sell you a sense of idyllic remoteness right at the heart of things. And in fact, slap on one of those bus routes that take you back to the towers and spires and the sounds you recognize. Londoners see their city with workaday eyes and seldom realize that their own hometown is a mecca for tourists who are drawn here from all corners of the world. That's why even St. Paul's Cathedral spruces itself up.
Oranges and lemons say the bells of St. Clement. I owe you 5 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's. Well, will you play me, say the bells.
London's not just a market today, it's a supermarket. And even its most venerable buildings with a wash and brush up are acquiring something of a snazzy new look to keep up with all the new commodities on show. But the stallholders in this open-air bazaar have never lost sight of the fact that their main selling line will always be tradition, as you see it in the Lord Mayor's show. Let the world kid itself that London is fast asleep and living way back in history. London will keep trundling along. And her latest and newest idea in restaurants will wear a turn-of-the-century veneer without giving 2 hoots. Here in Bishopsgate, they've gathered together the whole history of early motoring, and not sold it but given it away as the decor, with a menu combining modern dishes with old-world nostalgia. This is London, the London that the tourists quickly find. But even as you sit here, you sense that there's another London outside.
You can do what you like with them. And to that, there's the plates, the half a dozen. Look, every piece is burnished gold. Quality, do what you like.
And the tourists keep pouring in to the old place that we in Britain take so much for granted, to the old marketplace that we find hard to think of as a tourist centre. Because when Londoners turn themselves into tourists, they aren't landing, they're taking off. You don't realize that right round the calendar, tourists raise London's population by 1 million. Every day, the crowds come to see the Horse Guards. The show is colourful and free. The surprising thing is how few Londoners themselves ever see it. Just ask your friends what time it takes place, and most of them simply won't know. This is the glittering giveaway sort of ceremony that you won't find in any other market. Though horses have their established place, all sorts of horses. Old Father Thames could give you a good bit of sales talk. The river's been the scene of a stunt or two, but what's this they're pulling now? Oh yes, we sell all sorts of stunts in this marketplace, and a water motorbike we take in our stride. But it can't be the River Thames that attracts tourists by the tens of thousands. It can't be views of such things as the Houses of Parliament. What else can they find in this marketplace? Sensation? But of course, London's got sensation to sell as well as everything else. You won't find them missing a single trick, your press photographers. What have they cooked up here? This is Britt Eklund's birthday cake, so we're back from the thought of sensations to stunts and stars. For Peter Sellers must break into the scene any minute. And here he comes with her birthday present. But in London, if you're lucky, you can see stars like Frank Ifield in public. We're in Fleet Street, where you meet the top journalists and their raw material. This writer is jazzman journalist Pat Doncaster. Famous crime men gather here, in the pub that has the whole history of the printing trade on show. You stand your beer on upside-down printing blocks if you're a sports editor like George Casey here, and for his convenience, the geography has put the printer's way round. London pubs, if you pick them right, tell you the whole of London's social history. Here Gilbert and Sullivan come alive. The theme you can read in a whole string of hostelries is London, the London of fact and the London of fiction. As in the Sherlock Holmes, here's a pub that's the museum of a famous detective who never was. The Hound of the Baskervilles, fiction, and a gay dog of real life. Is it perhaps for this sort of thing that tourists come to London? Because they can strike up a conversation with a stranger over an inquiry about Conan Doyle's Speckled Band. There's a pub in Covent Garden where you can certainly get the best of two worlds, the Barrow Boys of the Garden and the baritones of the Opera House. There's no doubt here, where culture and commerce meet on human terms, that tourists come just because it is the most colourful market in the world, where they wrap the goods up in memories.
A real wit says, I ain't surprised because it's low. Oh, watch out, oh, the neighbours cry, who you gonna meet, Bill, and you bought the street, Bill, not I, oh, through the die, not them in the old den road.
£5 and it's yours, whoever wants it. Bring just a moment, sir. I don't want your £5, I won't sell one. I'll pack them in a bag. I can get hold of that set. I could smash them to 1,000 pieces. And I'd realise more money for the broken pieces. Upon the scale, the first hand gets it, the complete set. I'll smash them and realise more. The fun customer, the lot. £4. Gentlemen there one. Gentlemen there one. Lady.
Watch the daredevil skill of that driver coming up the hill. It's a race against the clock, and he's got to keep his foot hard down on the accelerator. The best of Britain's hill climb enthusiasts are here today in a holiday sunspot that for 12 exciting hours takes second place to the drivers and machines who are flagged away on this tricky, snaking circuit. Skidding excitement. Tomorrow, this road will lead motoring holidaymakers to golden sands and cliff-top beauty. You need a car to reach and explore all the hidden bays. For this is Jersey, Britain's sunshine outpost, which shelters within sight of France, and naturally enough is tasting the best of continental habits. Jersey, the miles of spacious beaches. Such charm is undeniable. Yet that's only one attraction to the visiting thousands who make tourism the biggest money-spinning industry in this, the largest of the Channel Islands. There's swimming pool luxury packed into almost every one of its 40 square miles. But today there's a carnival mood in the air and a splash of colour in the fields. They're out in the valleys picking the flowers for tomorrow's great showpiece parade in capital St Helier. A million blooms have to be replanted on skeleton floats that will form part of tomorrow's seafront extravaganza, the Battle of Flowers. The cost of just one float can be £1,000, not to mention all the hours of dedicated handiwork. It'll be a hard day's night for those backstage. as plane loads of passengers fly in to fill tomorrow's cheering seafront gallery. Tomorrow, 24 hours. Time enough to step out and appreciate the benefits and comforts of a self-governing island where the prices really do play ball with the taxpayer's pocket. The simple pleasures at half price. Or you can try taking the plunge in Mediterranean style. You simply zip into rubber suits to keep out the chilly northern water before getting a breath of fresh air in this sub-aqua world. What unexplained compulsion is there about life in the marine world which demands human beings step into such strange, almost grotesque costumes? The answer is probably easier to understand here in Jersey, where everyone lives within walking distance of the water's edge, an island so small yet so fascinating. And there's the experience you came to enjoy. Hunting below the waves at Bewley Bay, stalking your underwater prey with a spear as your only weapon. When you surface and reveal the spoils of this safari under the sea, it's difficult to realize such a tropical attraction is just 1 hour by air from London. A boat ride can take you 14 miles across the horizon to the coast of Normandy, if you're not steering a course to catch the ocean delicacies which fatten up in these waters. Only when the hidden wire cages are roped aboard is the menu for your next meal finally settled. Any doubt should be swept aside by the fishermen who know that disappointment in these rich waters is rare indeed. Lobsters, fat, juicy, delicious. Seafood succulence that deserves all the best dressed attention from an island where the nearby French influence is served on a plate. The intimacy of this continental outpost of the British Isles is what you can sample in 24 hours of open-air living. There's a temptation to linger over good food, unless you feel inclined to venture inland and pay a visiting tribute to zoologist Gerald Durrell. He's brought to Jersey a varied collection of animals and birds, many in danger of extinction, and established a zoo and preservation trust. Remember, your 24-hour visit is no tortoise-pace schedule. Eventually, you've got to come out of that shell and try some more of that skid lid excitement. This time, even the children can get behind the wheel. A go-kart track is really a chance for every adult who's still a schoolboy at heart. It might be kid stuff on the first circuit, but just wait until the experts roll forward on the starting grid. You're not on the last lap when Jersey offers undiscovered surprises round the next bend. The near paradise pace of life here is a magnet for many who fancy a home on the island. But unfortunately, there isn't room for everyone. The unlucky ones keep going in the mainland rat race and often get into the sort of flat spin that produces works of art in the hands of a Jersey pottery expert. The potter's wheel, where pipe dreams take shape in the minds of those who are fascinated by such simple techniques. Try it to find out how difficult it is to fashion beauty from a lump of clay. Simple techniques, yet only made to look simple by those whose brushwork is the final touch, in a craft that has grown to production line standards. One more exhilarating spectacle remains on the day-long schedule, that balancing act of the waves, surfing, is taking place out in St. Juan's Bay, and there's a world-class entry for Jersey's major championship. When you finally sink down into the shallows, you step ashore to applaud the spectacle we've really come to Jersey to see. The Tivoli Boys Guard from Copenhagen, bringing a true international flavour to an event that has been an annual riot of fun and colour for over 60 years. All the circus-style clowning is just a preliminary to a climax of carnival colour. The massive floats, slowed by their weight of flowers, edge forward to show off the patience and artistry that was being added right up to the last moments. 24 hours ago, this was a skeleton float, and your introduction to Jersey was beginning. Now, those sunshine memories are in full bloom.
Blackpool Tower, looking down upon the fabulous fun town. Let's get away from the Cold War and the headlines for a minute or two and go holiday making with the world and his wife. Britain's in full production and holidays were never better earned. Up north they make for Blackpool, and Blackpool's made for a champion time, whatever the weather. From Lancashire and Yorkshire, they pour into Blackpool determined to have a grand holiday, and everything's off the ration. This, for instance. It's not North Country roly-poly, it's Blackpool Rock. But we still don't know how they get the name right through the middle.